You see Trevor Humphries on the right-hand side. I believe he's a New York area player. I met him at the Open in New Jersey a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And James Buckingham I recognize from a multitude of tournaments.
He's the Maryland guy.
Yep.
That I do know for sure. I'm seeing an 8-1-1 here with 9 hexproof. Humphries seeing an 8-0-2, so this is actually a pretty compelling matchup between these two players.
Yep. Trevor's taking a couple draws in this tournament. I believe he ended day 1 at 7-0-1.
And blue-white control for him, and he is on the planner cleansing as well. Jim Davis has made this very popular. There's a small black splash in here for Ultimate Price, but outside of that, this is a planner cleansing version of blue-white.
Well, I think that Trevor and Jim Davis rather run in the same circle.
Okay,
so.
fair enough. Buckingham playing Naya hexproof. Anything interesting about this particular version of the deck?
Not really. I mean, you have your 12. He's playing 3 Witchstalkers, so you have your 11 hexproof creatures, your enchantments, some Boros Charms, some Gorkland Rampagers. This is pretty straightforward stuff. A main deck, Gift of War Zova, 2 copies of Ajani Caller of the Pride. Don't necessarily see that in main decks, but it is what it is. Get something that's hard to kill into play and put a bunch of enchantments on it.
Strange, you talk about what we have seen in this format and what we've seen over the course of this weekend. The deck that Buckingham is playing, Naya hexproof, that's a deck we haven't seen. This is really the one that we have just not seen people playing and having success with ever since Journey and Nyx came out. It got some new tools, but no real success.
Yeah, the Tower Archer being the new big one. I mean, you have your Scout, you have your Witchstalker, and other than that, you're filling out with Voice of Resurgence or creatures that aren't really that great to put enchantments on. Getting another reasonable hexproof creature is a huge upgrade for this deck, but you still don't see a lot of it.
Both players going to lay out their opening hands here. Maybe Buckingham might be on a mulligan. We will find out in just a moment here. Again, this is a deck that does have to take a couple mulligans just because it's the combo deck of the format. That's what this is.
Yeah, you're very sensitive to having all your colors of mana early, and you need to have something to do, which is a creature and enchantment. So your opening hands are very sensitive to just missing pieces. You can't win games, obviously, when your hand is all enchantments and no creatures, and you can't win games where you just have a couple of these creatures and no enchantments to go on them, and you also need to cast everything on time, so you mulligan a fair bit.
And Buckingham going to take a mulligan down to 5 cards here. Trevor Humphries at the ready to do battle, so we'll see what does end up happening here. The thing about Buckingham's deck too is that he gives away what he's doing right away. Yeah, so there's not really going to be the ability to conceal any information. You don't know if Humphries knows what Buckingham is playing, but you imagine if Buckingham plays a Glade Cover Scout, Humphries is going to say, okay, well, I know what you're up to, even if I lose game 1, and I can sideboard appropriately.
Yes. Although this will be a matchup where if Trevor is on the Jim Davis school of blue-white control, where the absence of Detention Sphere and Banishing Light is going to come back to harm him a little bit.
Yeah, just a touch. Again, you're not too excited to take care of those enchantments, but it's better than nothing.
Right. The problem is, when your entire game plan against this deck is Supreme Verdict or Planar Cleansing or something along those lines, then when the Hexproof deck has Boros Charm, it's a disaster for you. Yes. It's hard to win those games. When you have Banishing Light and Detention Sphere, you can take the sting out of some of those draws by tagging the Ethereal Armor and slowing down the clock substantially.
Buckingham going to take a look. He is not happy. Down to 4 he goes.
Whew. And Trevor just... the picture of stoic confidence here.
Well, it's hard not to be. I'm 8-0-2 in an invitational. This is good for me.
Yeah,
I like how this is going.
Finally get my shot on camera,
Gonna get a freebie in game 1.
Yep, absolutely.
And about as close as you can get to a freebie, especially for this matchup. Trevor's draw would have to be pretty poor, I think, or something would have to go wrong in this situation. But we have seen players win on mulligans to 4 before, so.
It's hard for Trevor to interact with James's core strategy outside of Supreme Verdict and Planar Cleansing. Those cards are a little bit slow to the party, and they're susceptible to getting tagged by Boros Charm. So James' ideal 4-card hands can still be competitive in this matchup.
We'll see what he can find, what he's looking for. He does shuffle up yet again. And there's never a good time to take a mulligan to 4, of course, but it is Magic. These things do happen.
Glade Cover Scout, Madcap skills, and 2 lands that's an opening hand capable of winning.
That is the fastest keep in the world.
Yeah.
And you'd be happy.
You'd be thrilled.
Yeah. Let's see if Buckingham can find that combination of 4 cards here. He'll lay them out. There's a Sacred Foundry. He's going to keep it. And Humphries as well. Looks like they're trying to figure out exactly who's going first, maybe waiting for the go ahead from us here, but we'll be underway in just a moment here for you guys in round number 11 of 16 of our Season 2 Invitational, a Sacred Foundry to get things underway.
And it looks like James's hand has Mana Confluence and a Voice of Resurgence, so that's fine. Not a shabby 4-card hand.
It's functional. That's a last breath.
Never mind.
Yep.
Forget everything I said.
Buckingham going to take a draw here. Maybe a Temple, maybe not. Yeah, Temple of Abandon. And he's just going to leave that card on top and pass the turn back. You see the Planner Cleansing over there for Humphries.
And now this is, I mean, when we're at the stage where the blue-white control deck is doing this, that's a slightly risky attack because these Nihexpert decks do play Selesnya Charm, but Trevor can even afford to get Stone Rain on turn 2. He's so far ahead on resources.
Buckingham just going to play Voice of Resurgence and simply pass the turn back, so he's trying to get something started here. Humphries firing up, beautiful, going to attack here for 2 yet again.
I've never seen blue-white control go on the offensive this early in a match.
I'm here to try to get you dead. That's what's happening right now. There's a Temple of Enlightenment, so we'll take a look here. He's going to leave that card on top and simply pass the turn back over to Buckingham, who's going to draw. There's an Unflinching Courage over there in the grip. And this is a situation where you don't really have much of a choice, in my opinion. Maybe he's going to play another creature. We'll find out, but looks like he's going to go with a Temple Guard and just pass the turn back. Maybe he doesn't have an Unflinching Courage in his hand. Maybe he only has a creature. We'll see.
Well, it's hard to know what James even has really the resources to play around at this point. He's so far down on cards.
See a Sphinx's Revelation there in Humphries' hand. He's going to have to main phase this because of Voice being in play. And yeah, Buckingham does have an Unflinching Courage in his hand. I'm a little surprised not to see him just put that into play, cross his fingers, and hope for the best. As he will take a draw right now. It's a Boros Charm. Well, that makes it an ideal play now, I think.
Well, now, yeah, he's got some serious game. I mean, he can Unflinching Courage his creature and protect it from a follow-up next turn if he's feeling so inclined.
Going to attack for 2 yet again. Just pass the turn back. A little surprising to you, maybe? He's not casting this?
I think that I would be casting it in this spot for a couple of reasons. One is you just don't really have the resources to play around things. And second, you've already seen Last Breath. So, you know, that's a card you already are kind of incentivized to play around.
Now, there's an Ethereal Armor. His hand right now, again, Unflinching Courage, Boros Charm, and a Stomping Ground.
So I think James just has to put his resources in. He has to kind of just put the eggs in the basket, I feel like.
Picked up a copy of Ajani.
Now, Ajani may give him some resources to continue, you know, James is clearly trying to slow play his hand a little bit here. Ajani is a way for him to advance his board without being all in and getting destroyed by a sweeper or one removal spell. So I think Ajani and Plus is a play that you could see this turn, for example. We get the Voice of Resurgence out of Last Breath range, and it would develop his board.
This is going to be 3 mana. Let's see if it's going to be Ajani or if it's going to be Unflinching Courage. So it's going to be Unflinching Courage now.
So I think the logic here may be that he's trying to set up Voice of Resurgence and next turn set up Ajani for +2/+2 flying and double strike. If he finds another pump spell or an enchantment, that could be lethal.
Yep.
If Trevor spends his turn here playing Planner Cleansing into the Boros Charm, James has a shot.
Actually, oddly enough, you take a look at Trevor's mana base. I don't know if he has a 3rd white mana. He's going to mill here. There goes Ethereal Armor. Dissolve is the draw. Does he have a 3rd white mana? It looks like there's a Mutavault over there. I don't know if that's the case. We said that it would take a lot for Buckingham to win this game, but this might actually come to fruition here.
This particular build of blue-white control that does not have any copies of Detention Sphere or Banishing Light is very susceptible to the card Boros Charm. It's basically the worst card this deck can play against.
It's time to discard. And he will discard a Temple. Buckingham's going to draw. It's a copy of Sacred Foundry.
I mean, James is in this thing.
I think that James is the favorite right now.
Well, Trevor's setting up a large revelation here. But if he's not careful about playing around this Boros Charm, or if his hand doesn't allow him to do so, he's in a world of hurt.
Buckingham's going to go reaching for some mana. Yeah, now it's time to deploy a Johnny, it looks like. So here's this. Countering this would net Buckingham a Voice of Resurgence token. So you're probably happy if you... I mean, you're not thrilled if it gets countered, but in a worst-case situation, you're going to get yourself a Voice token. So there's Dissolve on the Ajani, assuming that Buckingham remembers the trigger. So we'll see if that does occur. And now this is going to be an attack for 4. Yeah, he says, I'm going towards you. No sense in going after Jace.
Correct. And I think that Trevor may be happy playing some spells on James's turn here because he's just working on the assumption that he's going to sweep this all away with a Planar Cleansing anyway.
That may be a poor assumption to be working under, however.
Well, if Trevor just animates his 2 Mutavaults and blocks, that's going to force James's hand.
So Buckingham's going to gain some life, and more importantly, Humphries is going to go down to 8 now. Humphries does draw a Temple of Enlightenment. And Jace is going to tick up. You see Unflinching Courage get milled, a card drawn there for Humphries. And it looks like Buckingham actually missed the Voice of Resurgence trigger there, so that actually is important because that would be a 2-2.
Well, that's a huge deal here.
Yeah.
If James is going to win this game, it's going to be just barely, so everything matters. And I think Trevor pausing for this long, I think he does respect the possibility. He does respect the possibility of Boros Charm here.
I mean,
he's also without triple white.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, what cards does he actually have to worry about? You know, as far as instant speed cards go, there's Celestial Charm, there's Boros Charm. In most builds of Naya Hexproof. So he has to be thinking quite a bit about, all right, what happens if he has a Boros Charm? What can I do about it? And other potential instants. Going to start by playing a Mutavault. That's a 3rd one of those. They're actually pretty good in this situation, all things considered. Just going to pass the turn back over to Buckingham, who is going to untap and take a draw now. And you see his hand of Sacred Foundry and Boros Charm. He's going to add, I believe, another copy of Sacred Foundry. So no help in the draw step there for Buckingham.
And James cannot really afford to miss draws from this point. I mean, he just needs some sort of action. This Voice is unlikely to get it done now, especially in the face of these additional Mutavaults.
And now here's an attack. And I am a big fan of a triple block here, just in case anything goes wrong. You know, then again, Rampager could be a disaster, but I don't know if you can beat Rampager in this situation anyway.
Well, the double block allows him to trade. The problem that I have with the triple block is it is really bad against Boros Charm because of double strike.
Sure.
Although I guess at this point, maybe you're willing to cash in a Mutavault to save 2 points of damage.
Yeah, there's potential of that. And it looks like that's going to be the case. So here's a triple block, 3 Mutavaults in front of in front of a 4-power Voice of Resurgence. And more importantly, 4 toughness. Yeah. Buckingham going to try to cast a Boros Charm here. See, Humphries does have a Dissolve in his hand. And it looks like he goes with maybe double strike on this. And now's a good time to cast this Dissolve.
Yeah, this is not close.
And Buckingham this time remembers the trigger. However, I think it was actually more important to remember the trigger last turn because he'd have a 2-2 attacking.
The window may have closed, is unfortunately the reality for James at this point.
Get that Pokemon thing off of Buckingham.
So we'll see how this wraps up here momentarily, but I think James's Voice of Resurgence is not long for this world.
It's not optional. So now it's time for, I guess, damage at this point. Yeah, so 2 and 2. I'll take care of 2 Mutavaults. And then another Voice token will come in, of course, because that Voice is dying.
Right.
So 2 2-2s now. But can those get the job done?
But critically, you know, Trevor has gotten the Boros Charm out of James's hand without disaster striking.
Yeah. Well, there's your board position. I think Buckingham deciding if he wants to play anything else. His turn again. He's got 2 copies of Sacred Founder. He's just simply going to pass the turn back over to Humphries, who will take a draw. It's a copy of Hallowed Fountain. And that Jace is still ticking up, providing card advantage. And Humphries, he's doing better now. He's not out of the woods yet, though.
Not quite. There's still the possibility if he were to get sloppy of dying.
So now Hallowed Fountain's going to come into play untapped. He'll take 2. And he thought about casting Planar Cleansing, but he doesn't do it just yet because he wants to make sure he gets his value out of Jace. So there's better sequencing, and now here's a Planar Cleansing.
And again, the way that Trevor has played this game, if James had Boros Charm right there, that could have been game over.
Yeah.
Falling to 6th and falling from 2 from the attacks. It really speaks to how powerful that card is, the amount of work that it could do, even with Trevor being so far ahead on cards.
Island going to come into play. Back to Buckingham we go. Madcap skills to the draw, and this is part of the problem with Hexproof now, is that he's going to end up drawing, kind of the wrong half and wrong cards of his deck. And after that large revelation, James Buckingham is going to concede the game. So Trevor Humphries is going to win game number 1 over James Buckingham. Blue-white control is up a game here over Naya Hexproof. As we turn our attention to the sideboards here, you've got Naya Hexproof in front of you. What can Buckingham do outside of not mulligan to 4?
3 Skylasher, 3 Fiendslayer Paladin, a Celestia Charm, a Gorklan Rampager, a Gift of Orzova, 2 copies of Ajani's Presence, 2 Keening Apparition, and 2 copies of a card I cannot recognize based on handwriting.
That is Oppressive Raise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just good old Oppressive Raise.
Sure. Not a lot going on here that I'm a huge fan of. I think that even the Skylashers may come in this matchup because it does avoid some of Trevor's theoretical disruption, if you're expecting Detention Spheres in this list. And it's also an instant speed play, which is really nice when you're trying to play around Supreme Verdict and Planar Cleansing as much as possible. The Keening Apparitions might also come into the same end.
Yeah, I can see that as well. Take a look at Humphries' side here. You've got 3 copies of Ashiok Nightmare Weaver. Haven't seen those in a while. 2 Dispel, 2 Negate. We've got a Jace Memory Adept, a Deicide, a Hero's Downfall, a Last Breath, an Ultimate Price, a Gainsay. Interesting options here. Looks like a couple of copies of Archangel Thune as well. So.
Yeah, I like Last Breath quite a bit in this matchup. You've seen Voice of Resurgence, even though there aren't really that many targets in the deck, honestly. Voice is problematic enough that it's probably worth bringing in pretty narrow cards to fight it. The Deicide, of course, is very good here. Any sort of enchantment removal is going to be at a premium. I think the Negates can come in as well.
Any chance you like Ashiok?
I don't think so. Trevor's list is he's not that heavy on black mana. It's a pretty large cost for him to bring in Ashiok. I think it's much better against decks like Jund Monsters where, you flip over a 4-mana creature, and then you put that 4-mana creature into play, and that has a huge impact. Even if he hits a creature off of James's deck, that's not really going to allow that creature to block or do anything very profitable because James is putting a bunch of creature enchantments on his 1 creature. And it doesn't give him any sort of help in the matches where he's just getting beaten down. So
that's true. That's true. Maybe it's better on the play than the draw, too. I don't know. We'll see.
James has so many creature bump effects, and he has so many effects that give his creatures trample specifically, and his creatures are so innocuous to begin with that trying to get creatures off of James's deck and then block profitably doesn't seem like something that can happen.
So Humphries able to win what was a much closer game than I expected it to be, truth be told.
For sure. Again, it's hard to overstate how good Boros Charm is against Jim Davis's build of blue-white control.
Yeah. And it is very, very good.
It's a very powerful Magic card in general, and specifically against blue-white and Esper style decks. But the ones that have Detention Sphere and Banishing Light can at least take some of the sting out, bridge the gap, slow the game down. These builds of blue-white control have no choice but to just jam sweepers, and Boros Charm is devastating in those kind of games.
Boros Charm is an interesting card to me just because the power level of the card is just off the charts, but there's not really a great home for it.
Well,
that's all.
It's very powerful in Naya Hexproof because all the modes matter.
Yeah, this is true.
And it's powerful in Burn because 2 for 4 damage is just the best rate that you can find. So there are some homes for it, but relative to its power level, it is a little underplayed.
Both players shuffling up for game number 2. If you are just joining us, Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, StarCityGames.com Open Series featuring the Invitational. Season 2 Invitational is where we're at right now. Brian Bronwyn currently sitting in first place right now at 9-0-1.
pretty impressive, especially given that he had that incredible tear through the Swiss rounds, at least for a while, in the Charlotte Invitational.
They start 10-0 there. So we're in round number 11 here. We'll see if the wheels do maybe fall off for Brian again. Who knows? Obviously not hoping that for him, but it was a tough timeout last time.
For sure.
Starting 10-0 and then not making top 8, which is of course one of his goals. Really tough to take.
He looked like he got beat up.
Yeah.
By the end of the day, he looked like he got in a fight.
Like the wind got knocked out of him or something. Buckingham going to take a mulligan again here. All right, Hexproof going down cards again. Again, this deck does mulligan a lot because it is a combo deck. It's just I need the appropriate number of creatures. I need the appropriate number of enchantments.
But he can kind of slog through it here a little bit. He has temples, and he doesn't need that much stuff to get a really powerful draw.
Looks like Buckingham is going to take a quick break here to go to the restroom. So we'll bring it back to Patrick and I while we do wait for James to come back here. Naya Hexproof deck, again, not a deck that we see a ton of in Standard. I don't think there's any particular reason for that. I think it's a deck where, if you want to beat it, you can. If you ignore it, you may end up losing to it. But it seems like it's, is it well positioned this weekend? It's kind of hard to say.
It is, you get some splash damage from the Abrupt Decay Golgari Charm thing going on in so many decks, because those two cards are pretty potent against you. Most lists of Black Devotion, even the ones that are splashing green or red, still have some number of Devour Flushes in their list. That's quite bad for you as well. The upshot is there's a lot of opponents that just cannot interact with you, where a Hexproof creature plus Unflinching Courage, for example, is going to be game over. Yeah. So you have some really polarized matchups. There's some decks that, what you do doesn't matter, or they have a lot of really good answers to what you're trying to do. And there's some matchups where they don't, and they're at the mercy of your draw. So it's definitely a metagame read deck, because the tools are out there to beat this if it's a deck you're explicitly trying to fight. But not every deck has access to those tools, and not every color has access to those tools.
Yeah, this is true. This is definitely true. Again, it's a deck that I think a lot of people expected to get better with the addition of Basara Tower Archer, and just, maybe getting a little bit better of a mana base, and, it's coming from a unique angle, but it hasn't really broken that way.
No, and it's also a deck that I think that a lot of players are loath to play because they feel like, the same thing with lands or that Green Devotion deck that Jerry played. A lot of what's going on is outside of their control.
Yeah, this is
now,
true.
With Naya Hexproof and Standard, I do think there actually is a fair amount of play to the deck. There's a lot of tricks, and a lot of times sequencing matters. So I don't think it's as bad as some of the modern iterations of Hexproof decks, where it's just a combo deck, and it's just, there's very little play to it. I think the Standard list there's a little bit more of a game that goes on both with it and against it. Yep. But I still feel people have this stigma about the deck where they feel like, all right, well, I draw good hands or I don't, and that's the only thing that's going on here, and I don't want my tournament to come down to that sort of thing. Even though everyone's tournament does, to some degree, come down to that sort of thing. Yeah. But it's a feel that I think a lot of people just don't like.
As far as this blue-white control deck that Humphries is playing, again, a little bit of splash here for black and Ultimate Price and Ashok in the sideboard, but he is playing the Planar Cleansing version of this deck. This version of the deck, at least, is, I think, a lot more popular than I expected it to be for this particular weekend.
Yeah, there's some matchups where losing the Detention Spheres and Banishing Lights are a big cost. I was talking to Reed Duke before coming on this round. He's playing a similar list this weekend. He lost to Black-White Midrange, and that was a match where he said the absence of Detention Sphere was a disaster for me. His opponent Thoughtseize Pack Rat, and exactly, scoop him up. So there are some costs of playing it that way. I think the Judd Monsters list matchup overall improves, and there's some matchups that improve dramatically when you don't have those cards in your deck.
Sure.
But there are matchups where it is a very big cost. I think this is one of them. I think Mono Blue Devotion is one of them, and then Black-White Midrange / Thoughtseize Pack Rat decks is another matchup where it's a pretty big cost.
And these here feels like the ultimate safety net to protect you from things, to bridge you from that, into the early, to the mid, to the late. That's what Detention Sphere does a really nice job of doing, but people are always going after it.
And it's a catch-all for cards like Thassa and Erebos that cause you all sorts of headaches as well.
Yeah.
So both in fighting specific cards and just as a pretty big variance reducer, it is valuable.
Well, again, Buckingham has already taken one mulligan here, so I imagine these players will get a slight time extension. And then we'll be underway here for game number 2 in just a moment. So we'll find out exactly what is taking place here. But we're in round number 11 of 16 here in our Season 2 Invitational. Chris Van Meter already punching his slot to the Players' Championship. We got to work our way towards one more. So it's going to be fun to watch as we make our way through the Swiss and then tomorrow the elimination rounds.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the Invitational in and of itself is an awesome tournament, but the prize at the end, that slot in the Players' Championship, is the icing on the cake.
I don't think we can ignore the $10,000
No.
or the likeness on the card either.
No, those are all valuable things. I would personally value $10,000 greater than a token, but the token's still
That's
quite
you.
valuable.
That's you.
I'm not saying, I'm not passing judgment on anyone who feels differently.
I'd rather have the Derek Sheets token.
If I
personally.
got a Derek, if my token was as cool as Derek Sheets' token was, that would change the value proposition. I still don't think it's $10,000, but is it, I don't know, is it $5,000? Then we're starting to talk about, now I would be strongly considering it.
Especially just having a big one of those in your room every time
Yeah.
you walk in home from work. There's just you on a bird.
Yeah.
That brings a lot of happiness.
A
to
really
person's
distressed bird.
life. Yeah, get off of me. Why?
Why is this happening?
So it's time to lay out some cards here. Buckingham going to take a look at his 6. And he's going to take another mulligan. This is just a match full of them for James Buckingham.
Yeah, this is unfortunate. This is, you price yourself into some amount of this when you're playing a deck like Naya Hexproof or Dredge and Legacy. There's some decks where you just kind of have to mulligan a lot, but this is unreasonable even by Naya Hexproof standards.
Yeah, this is a lot of mulligans for this deck. Again, this is a deck that does mulligan a decent amount, but this is a lot. I feel like, as you said, even for this, like this is the 5th one.
Yes, in
Yeah.
2 games.
Yeah, in 2 games. So it's not timely, but I guess if you're gonna mulligan all the way out, you might as well just get it over with all in one match.
For
I guess
sure.
That's one way to look at it.
Now, this was a competitive 4-card game that we saw last
That
time.
is
So
true.
it's not unreasonable for James to win this game on 5 or 4 cards.
That is true. It was a competitive 4-card mulligan last game, which is crazy to even think about. So that is actually kind of wild to think about.
Yeah.
This looks like James having a little bit of assistance from the judge shuffling his deck.
It's possible that the way that Trevor was shuffling his deck was conducive to a sleeve split, and he wants someone from the floor to shuffle instead. And that's not uncommon. When I play against Gerard Fabiano, I ask for a judge
God.
because his hands perspire quite a bit, and it renders the sleeves unusable. So
Yeah, I've had the Gerard Fabiano experience. It is really
it's
something.
rough.
Yeah.
It's rough.
I
quite
mean, his
honestly.
hands sweat a lot. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it's not his fault.
Yeah,
But
I have been there.
sleeves are what, $8, $9, $10? I can't just have Gerard ruining the sleeves. I
No.
don't have that kind of money.
Another Glade cover scout here for Buckingham. See if he has a second land, and the answer is no, he does not. Maybe he does. All right, so he does. It's Temple Guard. He'll pass the turn back over to Humphries, who will take a draw. It's an island. And he'll pass the turn back over to Buckingham, who will draw a card. It's a copy of a Johnny.
And you see Trevor has brought in the negates, so any early protection against the enchantment draws is what he's looking for
Yeah,
here.
you can't be too surprised about that. Here's an attack for 2. Humphries is going to go down to 17. Buckingham's going to play a stomping ground. And now the follow-up play is going to be a Witch Stalker. So he's just trying to get his beat down on.
And the Witch Stalker is a really nice play there. I don't know if James necessarily sniffed out the negate, but it is much better against what James had that turn.
Yeah, to me, it feels like, again, this is kind of a situation where it's just like, all right, well, I'm kind of all in from the start, so I'm just going to play these creatures, hope you don't have a verdict or an answer to this stuff, and maybe it breaks my way. Maybe it doesn't.
Well, again, if Trevor is bringing any sideboard cards in this slot, it's probably things like negate, like deicide, and so just sequencing your creatures first makes a lot of sense when Trevor has 2 mana up.
Buckingham draws his card for the turn. He does have a Johnny Caller of the Pride in his hand. So let's see exactly how he wants to navigate this turn. It's going to be an attack for 5. So now that is a block with Mutavault, or at least an attempt.
Now, this is some really gutsy play here by Trevor. James is making a very strong representation of the possibility of something like Gorklan Rampager, which, Trevor can't counter, obviously, and he can't interact with the Glade Scout. He was still willing to make the block there and just for free got to kill one of those scouts.
Here's a Johnny after combat. That's not resolving. That's going to get negated. So you could argue that's a perfect turn for Trevor.
That is brutal. Although I believe there may have been a miss on the Witch Stalker trigger, which could come back to hit James a little bit here. But Trevor with a really gutsy call there of a very strong representation of Gorkline Rampager, and got paid off.
Galvatron's going to come into play on tap now. Here's a Jace. See exactly how Trevor wants to use the Jace. It's going to start at 4, of course. Elevator here go up to 5 or down to 3, depending on if he wants cards or not. And he says, I want to protect my life total and my Jace a little bit. So Buckingham's going to untap. It's going to take a draw here. He does have a Madcap Skills in hand.
I think with the Archangel in his hand, he may just be trying to just kind of gum up the ground a little bit this turn and try to win with the Archangel. But Madcap Skills gives James some play if that's Trevor's line.
Buckingham wants to decide what he wants to do this turn. He'll take a moment, survey the position, figure out if it's time to cast Madcap Skills. If so, which creature do I put it on? Move in on the Witch Stalker, maybe make the smaller threatened Glade Clever Scout a little bit bigger into a 4/1.
Generally speaking, you're better making one creature as large as possible against a Jace, but there is also an argument for spreading out a little bit here too.
I guess the other question too is, do you take care of the Jace or do you just keep going up to the life total?
I would guess it's real close. It is really close. I would probably be inclined to go after the life total, I think. But giving Trevor 3 looks at Supreme Verdict next turn if you don't have a Boros Charm is a real big risk.
Yeah. And Buckingham says, all right, I'm going to Madcap Skills on my Glade Cover Scout. It's time to attack, and we'll see who he's going to attack towards. And it looks like he's going to go towards Humphries. So damage here, it's going to be 4, 5, 6, 7, minus 2 Jace triggers. Assuming Humphries remembers them, it should be 5 damage. Humphries goes to 6, but we'll see. Make sure he remembers those Jace triggers, of course. The turn's going to go back to Humphries. I have to imagine that Humphries is just looking for Supreme Verdict right now. Picked up a copy of Last Breath. Yuck.
Well, he also has access to Deicide here, so
Yeah.
he doesn't have to pull the trigger.
You saw Jason's just going to tick up.
And I don't like the sequencing here from Trevor. What I would have done is play the Scryland first. If you see Supreme Verdict on top, you just minus Jace, take your Supreme Verdict and wrap it up. That's a minor thing, but if he had Supreme Verdict on top, he would have rather just minus the Jace this turn, I believe.
And I actually think the card that he was looking at was Supreme Verdict. And if your plan is to play Temple anyway, I think you want to, as you mentioned, get your info first.
Yeah,
so you can make a more informed decision.
Yeah. It's the only card that would cause Trevor to minus, but it's such upside if he does that. I think he had to do it that turn. And if he gets killed this turn, which is a possibility, that decision may really come back to haunt him.
Now Buckingham's going to come into the red zone here with both of these creatures. Looks like, I imagine maybe a Mutavault block here. Maybe not, just maybe it's something as simple as Deicide. And yeah, that's going to take care of the Madcap Skills.
But this does allow for a block. But there's plenty of dangerous cards that James can have here. If he has Gorkland Rampager, I don't think there's a way for Trevor to block to survive unless he's chump blocking Witch Stalker.
And I don't think that's what's going to happen. So, looks like an activation of Mutavault and then before blocker. He's not allowed to block just yet. And now he is. Now, yeah, this is a Rampager on Witch Stalker, and that's it. That's going to be 6 points of damage. Why? Wow.
Yeah. That's it.
That's going to do it. So James Buckingham's going to win this game over Trevor Humphries on a mulligan to 5. It's even here.
Like I said, you know, James can get 5-card hands that are totally competitive. And that one didn't even involve Boros Charm. And I think that slight misstep on the order of operations from Trevor might have doomed him that game.
I would say so. I'm fairly sure the top card of his deck was a Supreme Verdict. And again, if that's the case, you simply minus Jace, you take your Verdict, you clear those creatures out of the way, and then you move forward appropriately. You drop Archangel the next turn, who knows?
Right, his curve is totally rolled up at that point. I mean, he's Supreme Verdicts. What's James going to follow up with? Probably nothing of consequence. A small creature, his hands probably just pump spells, or maybe Boros Charm. And then you untap, you play Archangel, you get 1 hit in, the game's over.
Yeah. So Buckingham has taken 5 mulligans so far, and we're going to play a third game.
Yeah, if I'm Trevor here, you know, my confidence is shaken a little bit. My opponent mulliganed to 4 and played a totally competitive game. My opponent mulliganed to 5 and killed me. Now what happens if James says, I'll keep 7?
Yeah, I don't want any part of that.
Yeah.
I want nothing to do with that. Well, we're going to find out here. Both players shuffling, going back to the sideboards. We'll see if any changes do take place. Humphries looks happy with his configuration. Buckingham wanted to take a look, but he's going to go back to pile shuffling. So both players happy with the 60 they'll be presenting momentarily. And we'll have a game 3 here between Nia Hexproof and Blue-White Control. Blue-White actually quite popular this weekend.
Not surprising. Invitational formats always are going to slant towards control decks, in my opinion.
Definitely, players that do like them. And I guess you can, you put the Revelation decks in that camp. You also have to imagine that we're putting, Mono Black Devotion as a control deck as well. So
yeah, I mean, it does play kind of a beatdown role in some matchups, but that's only because the other player is so much more controlling.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nia Hexproof, this deck only plays one way.
There is no control element to Nia Hexproof.
It is trying to get you dead as fast as they can. You see the judge will assist here. Buckingham again. Buckingham doesn't want to lose any more sleeves. So Humphries will be on the play this go around.
And this is, again, not the most inspiring set of games here if you're on Trevor's side of the table.
Yeah. He's looking at a couple of lands, looking at a couple of counter spells as well. You see a Dissolve, a Syncopate. There's also Supreme Verdict over there too. Buckingham going to lay out his. Let's see if he can keep 7 for the first time this match.
Or even 6.
Yeah. He's got a tight squeeze on those cards. See if he's happy with what he's looking at. Nope, another mulligan. 6.
Nope.
6 mulligans. Yeah.
So we're getting the spotter over here to shuffle up
The
again.
judge is having more work this match I think he's ever had before.
Yeah.
Actual 6 mulligans here.
But again, James has shown quite the capacity to win on fewer than 7.
Yeah, winning on 5 last game, almost winning on 4. I really think he should have won that game on 4. Just kind of looking back at it.
Well, there was a missed Voice of Resurgence trigger, and there was a couple other sequencing things.
He played too cautiously to me with the Unflinching Courage on a couple turns that game where, it looks like the way that things may have broken is that he could have played Courage and just kind of crossed his fingers, hope for the best, and the best would have been a win.
I think so. I think so as well.
So, a little bit crazy there.
So even with this mulligan happening, I mean, even if James says I'll keep 6, if I'm Trevor, I'm probably feeling that I'm the underdog to win this game. And this is a deck that's not really about a critical mass of things. It's just A plus B. There's some analogs to something like Sneak and Show and Legacy, where it's just I need my way to cheat something into play and my thing to cheat into play. I need my creature and I need my enchantment.
Yeah, it's a combo deck. It's a weird take on a combo deck because we think of ad nauseum tendrils and some other things as a combo deck, but this is the combo deck of Standard. They don't really let us have great combo decks in Standard anymore. No more Dragon Storms or Scape Shifts or anything. Probably for the best, honestly.
I mean, it's just a matter of degrees, right?
Let's make it 7 mulligans. Down to 5 we go again.
I believe this may be a record for me in terms of watching a match.
Ignoring someone playing Dredge and Legacy, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This is the most I have seen in a match before. And somehow we are still playing a third game. Like, Buckingham just won on a mulligan to 5, so it is definitely possible for that to happen, even though I think that this is Humphries' best hand of the match so far.
Sure.
Syncopate, Dissolve, a Supreme Verdict, and lands.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't had Supreme Verdict on 4 yet.
Yeah.
Game 1, he was kind of fiddling around towards player cleansing, and the game that we just saw, he had Jace on 4. So Supreme Verdict, of course, changes the equation quite a bit. Being able to syncopate a Voice of Resurgence on time, I mean, these are all things that are really working Trevor's favor.
Both players about to, I assume, do battle here. Judge with his 6th shuffle of the match. So A little assistance. And then we'll see if Buckingham can find 5 cards that he likes.
Appears to be no bad blood between the two competitors
Yeah,
for
no, not at
requesting.
all.
Yeah.
Not at all. This could be sweaty hands for Humphries. You know,
I
that's
don't know.
realistic.
Humphries is a pretty muscular dude. He might just be breaking sleeves left and right for all we know.
The sleeve splitter? Is that his finishing move?
Could be.
All right, 5 cards. Let's see if he finds what he's looking for. All right, he said he
All
will
right.
keep.
Got to keep 5 cards. How lucky.
The tempo of silence to start it up.
God, you've just been running so hot the whole match.
Yeah. Buckingham going to draw his card. It's a glade cover scout. Down to 18 goes James. Humphries will draw a card. It's a hollowed fountain. That'll come into play on tap right away to represent the syncopate that we know he has.
Could be syncopate, could be negate, could be
Deicide.
deicide. Yeah. A lot of tricks.
A second land.
And these are the kind of hands that James needs a mulligan for. He's color sensitive too.
And there's a syncopate.
You know, he has all 3 colors of mana. That's a functional hand.
Divination was the draw. I think Humphries probably has to take 2 to cast this. Yeah, he will take 2. He's down to 15, so doing a little bit of damage to himself. He's actually just going to leave up. Dissolve, I believe.
I'm a little surprised there. I think that I would have divination that turn because there's no 4th land, and anything that he dissolves, he could have just swept up with the Supreme Verdict next turn.
Yeah. Also, there's taking 2 that represent a counterspell I don't love. Like, I understand taking 2 because you want to draw cards. I don't love taking 2 to try to represent a dissolve because, as you mentioned, you can sweep out anything that slips through the cracks.
And now it's risky to divinate because James could potentially go, I'll play something, and now I have Boros Charm up.
Mm-hmm. Jace isn't a bad play, though. That's going to tick up.
Jace is totally fine here for Trevor.
Buckingham draws his card for the turn.
This induces action from James, which is what Trevor is really in the market for.
That's all he wants. Be it creatures or enchantments.
Yeah.
They all die the same to Supreme Verdict. Buckingham taking a look at the board here. 2 mana is going to get tapped. Maybe a Madcap Skills, perhaps a Voice of Resurgence, and it will be a Voice. It's simply passing the turn back, as Glade Cover Scout can't really do anything.
This is still something that Trevor's Jace basically has on lock.
Yep.
So, again, still no reason to act.
There's a Plains. This is 4 mana. Feels like maybe a Verdict now. Get some of this stuff off the table.
And I don't mind the Verdict in this spot really that much either because the shields are down on Boros Charm. So this is reasonable value to get, I feel, off your Supreme Verdict, and you're going to get an opportunity where it's just not going to get countered.
Yeah, you might be a little scared of a card like Mending Touch here, but
yeah,
we know that Buckingham doesn't have access to that in his deck list. And Buckingham going to go through things here for a moment. Maybe try to bluff a Mending Touch at this point, saying, do I want to use it? Do I not want to use it? He's actually going to use a Johnny's Presence here to make a creature indestructible.
Sure.
So about the same. Might actually be better than Mending Touch.
I think so. It's a little more flexible. It's roughly the same card.
So Glade Cover Scout's going to bite the dust. I imagine Jace will take up, yeah. Just pass the turn back. Buckingham will take a draw. You see the Witch Stalker in his hand.
Matthew Seeger, please report to the open stage. Matthew Seeger.
So he wants to do on this turn. Attack Jace, maybe attack Humphries. Humphries at 14. Got to get to work in that life total, I think.
I don't know. Jace on the table is so threatening too. But if you can't make any significant inroads on Jace, then it's probably just go after the life total.
Yeah.
Knocking Jace down a little bit here and there is not worth as much as getting in a couple points on Trevor.
Maybe try to get lucky, run off some Boros Charms and Rampagers.
Yeah, he does have some, he does have those long draws, like things that can catch him up from losing spots, high impact cards.
This is an attack for 1, and Humphries is going to go, Buckingham's going to go straight towards Humphries. So Humphries is going to go down to 13. There's a Witch Stalker and a passing of the turn. Trevor will draw a card. It's a Mutavault. That goes directly into play. So this is 4-man. Might be another verdict now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And James tried his best. You know, he was obviously conscious of trying to play around the card as much as he possibly can, but the game was just going in such a way that there was no chance of that happening. He had to commit another threat to the table.
Matthew Seeger, please report to the open stage. Matthew Seeger.
Well, Buckingham will draw a card. Just a 1/1 voice of resurgence token out there, but the Jace is taking care of that. Now there's a Tower Archer. It's going to make voice into a 2/2, but the Jace trigger will make it into a 1/2 when it does attack, so long as Humphries does remember.
And I think he has ethereal armor in hand, is just figuring out if he's willing to make another commitment.
Now there's Mutavault. That's going to block right away. And now there is a Johnny's presence.
There's another Johnny's presence.
Yeah. Now, of course, that token does tap to attack, so that'll have to be tapped. No reason for that to have vigilance at this point. So Humphries will draw a card. And there you do see a Johnny's presence. Any number of targeted creatures each get +1/+1 and gain indestructible. So working its way through a Mutavault there.
Very flexible card.
Yeah. 3 mana. There's a divination, and Humphries has had for some time. Last Breath, along with a Temple, are the draws. Trevor gonna fire off Last Breath right now to take care of that, while the opponent is tapped out. So Buckingham will gain some life here. Jace is gonna tick up. There's a Temple. Top card's going to go to the bottom. Maybe. Actually, it looks like it's going to stay on top. I think Humphries deciding a little unsure of himself at this point.
And now James has to be going after Jace here because Jace is about to go ultimate. And this is the board state that Trevor's been trying to set up the whole time. Now, James is all of his resources have to be committed towards Jace. If Trevor gets to untap, he has access to Dissolve, which will probably break up anything of consequence James can do on the follow-up. So this is a big turn. You know, this feels like the last turn James has to really make this competitive.
And he's got to go over here now. It's kind of a concession attack, really.
Yeah.
Just kind of feeling, well, I'm kind of priced into doing this. I don't want to, but basically I have to. There's a Glade Cover Scout. And just simply pass the turn back over to Humphries. Humphries will take a draw here. And we know about the Dissolve in his hand. The Jace threatening to go ultimate. There's a Last Breath now there, too. Last Breath not great on this board position, but the Mutavault's actually quite good in this situation.
And if I'm Trevor here, I'm happy just plussing up Jace and playing draw step to draw step.
Oh, yeah, because your draws are better than your opponent's.
Yeah.
Plus, when you have a counterspell in your hand, you got to be feeling pretty good about that, too.
Correct.
Looks like we may see an attack here. Yeah. So, trigger the Jace. It's going to make Tower Archer into a 1-power creature. This may be a Rampager we see here. Yeah, timely.
Can't counter that, and so James going to make a little bit of progress on Jace, but it's not. This is still not a long-term solution to anything that's going on here.
So Mutavault is going to Last Breath itself. I had a feeling he might see that. So Humphrey wants to gain some life, go up to 17.
Not a bad spot to do it, just because it's, you know, what else is this Last Breath really doing?
Yeah, so the trample damage, of course, will come across. So it's 1 minus, it's actually going to lose 5 counters. Yeah, so it's going to go down to 3. Was it 8? It's going to go down to 3 because of trample damage. There's nothing to apply to the Mutavault since it's not there, so 5 damage will come across.
But still fine. I mean, James is just treading water right now on the Jace, so.
I'm curious if you tick down. I had a feeling you might do that. There's another Last Breath, a Dissolve, and an Island. This feels like maybe it's getting away from Humphries.
Well, he's got a ton of draws that end the game on the spot here, but this did seem a little preemptive to me. Maybe he's just worried about losing his Jace to pump spells or another Rampager next turn and wanted to get some value out of it, but it felt like this opens up the door now for him to be trading draw step for draw step while taking damage, which is a big risk.
So Glaco Rosel's going to go at Jace. The Tower Archer's going to go upstairs. There's your damage. There goes Jace. Humphries is going to go down to 15. And now I think this might be a voice resurgence, but I mean, again, Buckingham knows that Humphries has a dissolve. He doesn't know about the second dissolve, but he knows about one of them. So casting a speller is actually pretty tough.
Yeah, I like this play quite a bit. I mean, from James here, letting Trevor scry is so dangerous when there's, 10 or 12 cards in his deck that you're going to really struggle to beat.
Yeah. This is an attack for 3. Humphries going to go down to 12. Buckingham with a Temple of Abandon. That card's going to go to the bottom for passing the turn back. Hey, it looks like he's going to cast a spell now. And it's actually, I think, safe to cast a spell now because your opponent's cried on top.
Yep.
So I'm going to look at a card again. I'm guessing Sphinx's Revelation. Maybe not. So, wow, he really wanted to keep Elixir on top. I'm a little surprised by that.
Well, Elixir represents kind of 2 draw steps at this point, given what the race looks like, but I would have tried to find something more high impact, I believe.
There's another voice. I think we're going to see an Elixir shuffle first and then a dissolve.
Yeah. This is crazy that this game is, even remotely competitive given what the circumstances were.
Yeah.
Now, in Trevor's defense, there's a lot of draws that he's missed on that could have won the game. I mean, the Sphinx's Revelation, an Archangel, and all of this. Elspeth.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways for him to close the door. He's going to try to find one with this dissolve. So that's going to counter that. Take a look at the top card. That goes to the bottom very quickly. Another attack for 3. Humphries is going to go down to 14. There's no way, right?
There's no way that James wins this.
Humphries draws. It's a Mutavault. It's pretty good, actually.
It's not bad here, although I believe James has another Rampager in his hand.
Oh, in we go. Yep, there's a Rampager. So now 5 minus 2 is 3, 4, 5. Humphries goes down to 9. Take a draw. Is that a spell? It is. All right, Supreme Verdict's pretty good.
That's not a bad spell draw here.
Yeah. Buckingham's going to untap and take a draw. Selesnya Charm is the draw, so pass back to Humphries, who draws a card. In just a moment. We'll see what that's going to be. Looks like he just drew and passed. So there's a Selesnya Charm.
I think this is an upkeep Selesnya Charm. James has seen so many counters that he wants to play around it.
Sure.
It's a little bit worse if it's Planar Cleansing, but you probably are happy to trade a Night Token.
Yep.
For a Planar Cleansing in that spot.
Buckingham draws. Attacks for 2. Humphries is going to go down to 5. Another creature. I think it's Tower Archer. Yeah.
And Dispel is in Trevor's hand here.
This is a Divination as well. All right, 2 cards coming. Island and a Mystery.
Think it was another Divination?
Ah, we're chaining Divinations. Yes, we are. Hit 1. Hit 2. A Last Breath and a Mutavault. Mutavault's good.
Mutavault's, yeah, again. Mutavault plus Last Breath is excellent here, as it allows him to potentially block the Archer and Last Breath the Night Token.
Don't forget, Mutavault will be summoning sick on this particular turn when he plays it.
Correct.
So you can only do 1. I think he's trying to figure out what land to play because of that. I still think you have to play Mutavault here.
Yeah, the island isn't really doing anything for you.
Well, he's going to play an island. I guess the thought process here is play island so that you can. Well, you could still Last Breath plus Dispel anyway. So
yes. And now, because he has Dispel backup, he may try to trap James here, where he says, "I'm going to Last Breath." I might have wanted to Last Breath the Night inside of combat here, because you may trap him into saving it with some sort of pump spell, and then your Dispel works, but it's probably all the same regardless.
Yeah, it gets blown up if it's Rampager.
Yeah.
But I think he would Rampage around the hexproof creature anyway, I presume. So
yeah.
Let's take a draw here and see what this is going to be. That's a Madcap skills. Oh my
Unbelievable.
God. Oh my God. James Buckingham
Unbelievable.
has just won a match where he has taken 7 mulligans
Unbelievable.
and moves on to 9-1-1.